What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be covering the best late round fantasy draft tight ends and fullbacks that I like to target late into fantasy drafts that I can utilize to fill out my roster or turn into long-term solutions for my team. And I'm going to be covering an array of guys. I have like 8, 9, maybe 10 guys on this list that can be utilized for different purposes. So we're going to just go ahead and jump into these players. Now, the first thing that you guys are probably going to do whenever you're looking for these late round players is obviously everybody wants to look for speed. And so we're going to sort by speed real quick, and I have a couple of notes for you guys. One of the top players on this list, and I want to say that we're going to ignore some of these guys that are like mid to high 70s because they're probably going to be gone by this point in the draft or by late rounds in the draft. And really, we're looking at more of guys that are like, 60s overall. So the first player that I want to add to this list is Alberto. And this one's an obvious one. If you can get a guy with speed like this late in the draft, this is a fantastic steal. Now, he's going to go a little bit earlier than a lot of other players because he is super young at 22 years old and he has one of the best speeds in the game at 88. He does lack in the blocking category, but he's fantastic as a receiving weapon. And if you can find him late in a draft, that is somebody's name that I think you should absolutely have out there. Now, I want to add that Hakeem Butler is here as well with really good speed to match. But the one thing that I want to add about Hakeem Butler is that generally speaking, I tell people to stay away from Hakeem Butler because they get caught in this trap of thinking, oh, he's got that 88 speed, he's going to be a fantastic player, this, that, the other thing. And he just lacks in too many areas to really become a successful tight end. If you want to find a guy that could be, a half decent depth receiver for you or something, Hakeem Butler could be that guy because he's a tall receiver, big body, he's 24 years old. So he really doesn't have a lot of room to grow, and he lacks in a lot of areas that are really important for a tight end. So he does have that athleticism. He can get downfield quick, but he really doesn't have any blocking skill whatsoever, and he really actually kind of lacks in the catching department as well. So he really doesn't have a lot to offer, and I just wanted to add this in as a note of somebody to stay away from because this is somebody that other people might prioritize because of his speed, but it's somebody that you can absolutely stay away from and be comfortable doing so. Now, the next thing that we're going to sort by here is we're going to sort by age and take a look at some of the younger players on the list. And I do actually have Cole Kmet on this list, surprisingly, because this guy actually ends up pretty available a lot of times in fantasy drafts. And the reason for it is because of his pretty low speed at 82 speed. He's not the most athletic player. He's more of a traditional type of a tight end, more of a possession type of a tight end, short routes, little curl routes, things like that, check downs for the quarterback. And so that 82 speed oftentimes prevents people from drafting Cole Kmet because everybody's looking for the speed player. And if you can, stand to have a traditional type of tight end, Cole Kmet could be the guy for you. He's 21 years old, he's 6'6", so he's huge, and he has hidden development. So that's why he's on this list, and I can't pass him up because he does end up available later than I think he should be available because he does have that hidden dev, but he ends up available because of that speed, like I said. Now, the next player that I want to talk about here is Colby Parkinson. Colby Parkinson isn't amazing by any means. He is very much in the same boat as Cole Kmet. He's not very fast, and so he ends up here late, but he is also still 21 years old. Now, he's a little bit lacking in the blocking department as well, but the thing that I like about him is that he's 6'7", and there is some evidence to suggest that having the taller player helps your players come down with catches more often. I've had tall players like Craig Gentry for the Steelers come down with catches at an alarming rate when they're only like a 50 or 60 overall. And so this is somebody to be out, aware of their name in case you want just a big-bodied player that has the potential to grow. He's 21 years old, and I'm not going to say he's going to turn into an amazing superstar for you or anything, but it's 21 years old with a 6'7" frame. It is somebody that you could absolutely fill out your roster with, even as a second tight end or a third tight end. You should at least know his name. Now, the next player to talk about on this list is Thaddeus Moss. Now, a lot of people might question, why is Thaddeus Moss on this list? He's a super low overall. He really doesn't have a lot to add in any specific specific area, but he's not particularly bad in any area. He's not very good route running. He's got decent catching. He's, pretty low on speed. He's got half decent run blocking. So he's more of a low-end balanced tight end, but I have him on this list because, yes, he's 22 years old and he's a little bit small, but the game programs him to play better than what he actually is because of his name, because he, is related to Randy Moss. This is a player that you can expect to play above his 62 overall. And personally speaking, I would suggest for future years you keep his name in mind, because I can almost guarantee you that he will be programmed to play better than his overall because of his name. This is a guy that you absolutely need to know, especially long term, and so that is why Thaddeus Moss is the next player on this list. The next one that I want to talk about, we're going to be talking again about age. This is a player that I have just specifically had a lot of success with, and he's a player that is quick. So if you're looking for a quick tight end, Hunter Bryant is a good option. 22 years old. Again, he's not the biggest bodied player at 6'2", but he is relatively quick. Well, actually, he's not as quick as I thought he was. I thought he used to have 85 speed. He's only down to 83 speed now, but this is nonetheless a player that I have had quite a bit of success with, and I think part of the reason he's quick is because he does have that 87 acceleration, which is actually really good. So again, not going to be a superstar tight end right off the bat or anything like that, but a player that I have had success with over a long franchise, if that's something you're looking for. At the very least, keep his name in mind, because he can be a pretty solid long-term, workable tight end. Now, the next player that I want to talk about is actually going to be from a blocking perspective. So if I can get to lead blocking here, I want to talk about Trayvon West. Now, Trayvon West is interesting because he's 24 years old. So, he's not going to have a huge amount of time to progress. But this is a guy that I like to throw in as a potential fullback option because he has 73 lead block, 71 impact blocking. He only has 76 speed. But this is a guy that is going to be there because, nobody's going to look at this guy and say, oh, he's a fantastic player. I want to have him on my team. Nobody's going to look at this guy and say, oh, he's 21 years old. He could become a fantastic player. No, if you're looking for a fullback, though, keep Trayvon West in mind, because if the fullbacks go before you get one, Trayvon West is probably going to be there at literally the end of the draft. I can't imagine anybody taking him super early at all. And this is a guy that, because he has at least decent enough lead blocking at 73 and 71 impact blocking, he can be a really solid fullback for you. And then he adds some intangibles that fullbacks don't really have oftentimes, with that catching rating and some of these, carrying, ball carrier vision rating, spin move. And, he's pretty decent in those categories, so it is absolutely worth keeping Trayvon West in mind from a blocking perspective and a potential fullback perspective. Now, the next player that I want to talk about, and we're actually going to have just two more players on this list, are actually going to be at fullback. And these ones are going to be pretty obvious, but I want to talk about Alec Ingold. Everybody likes to overlook fullbacks, but this can increase his draft stock for you. One thing to keep in mind is if you are looking for a player that can be a traditional type of tight end, you could take Alec Ingold and make him into that type of player. Now, yes, he's short. He's 6'1". He's only 24 years old, but he has star development, and that's something worth noting. And oftentimes people will overlook the fullback position until really late in the draft, even later than tight ends, and you could take Alec Ingold and mold him into a legitimate tight end for you. And that is something that I think is worth noting. And even if you're just going to use him as a fullback, picking up a 24-year-old with star development that has pretty good blocking, lead block, speed, that's pretty good for a fullback. I'd say everything here for this guy is pretty solid for a fullback. This is a guy to, know his name, but, from a tight end perspective, this is a guy that could also be turned into a really good utility tight end, a possession tight end that could help you out in the run game, the run blocking game as well. Now, the last player on this list I think is probably going to be one of the most obvious players on this list, and that is Bronson Rechsteiner. Bronson Rechsteiner is, if people don't know his name in your league, this is an absolute steal if you can get him in the draft. Now, this is a player that is listed as a fullback, but he has 88 speed, 71 lead block, really good strength, really good acceleration, pretty good carrying to start off, and so this guy has a lot of potential no matter where you want to play him at. You could try to develop him as a tight end. Now, a lot of people say he's too short to play tight end, like Alec Ingold. Yes, he's only 6 foot, so he could be a little bit short to play tight end, but, if you're not being 100% realistic, you're not absolutely committing to that type of a thing, then you can play him as a tight end. But outside of that, if you don't want to play him as a tight end, you can develop this guy as a halfback as well, and he can serve in both the halfback and fullback roles for you. So, coming in with 88 speed and 90 acceleration is phenomenal for this type of a player, and as a 67 overall and super young at only 22 years old, this is a player that you can take and turn into a legitimate long-term starter at any one of those 3 positions: halfback, fullback, or tight end. And so this guy absolutely has to be on the list. I'm sure most people know his name because he's become kind of popular in the Madden community, but this is a guy that you should know his name, because if he's available when you're looking for a halfback, fullback, or tight end, this might be one of the #1 options for you guys to consider. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys enjoy this type of content, and hopefully you guys agree with my list. Even if you disagree, let me know in the comment section. I'd be happy to hear what guys you'd like to target late into the drafts, but I tried to give you guys a good balanced list here between blockers, runners, receivers, all those types of things, and hopefully it finds you well. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit that bell notification button so you're notified every time we drop a video, and make sure you guys, like I said, leave those comments down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hope you guys have a good night.